All right, everybody, welcome back to the 1880 podcast. It's Lindsay, Jasper, and Jewett, and we're really excited this week to jump into Jude, the only chapter, verse 11. We are only expecting to get through verse 11 today because we are now realistic with ourselves. So we are probably only going to get through verse 11 today. But to start us off, Jewett.
All right, so we owe you all part two of the vehicle stories. Um, are you ready to go with yours, Jasper? Do you remember yours from?
Uh, can you go first?
Can I go first? I can go first, as a matter of fact. So if you remember last week, Lindsay told her story about taking out a gas station. The whole thing went up in flames. That's how it went.
Oh my
Something
gosh.
No, not exactly. But
That's how
anyway,
it felt.
so Lindsay, took up the whole time talking. Me and Jasper didn't get to tell our stories. So here we are tonight telling our stories. And I think last second talking about it last time, we opened it up to more than just a car. So mine is not a car. Oh wait, no, it is. I have two. I have two. And I'll be quick. But I'll start with a golf cart. So I have a story about a frightening. And remember the prompt for this was uh, adrenaline, fear fueled memories involving a motor vehicle. So I have a memory when I was much younger than I am now, where we were at my cousin's house, although it might have been my grandparents' house at the time. And their front driveway was a circular driveway, pretty decent sized. On the inside of the driveway was probably a 4 foot circular brick wall, and inside the brick wall was like a potting flower area. So there was like a raised flower bed on top of the brick wall, on the entirety of the inside of the circle. And so we were driving the golf cart around one day, trying to think of who all was there. And I'm remembering bits of this memory as we go on. I think it was my dad and I in the front, and my younger sister in the back. Because golf carts, there's like two
Yeah, yeah.
seats facing the front, two facing the rear. We also happened to have our German Shepherd in the front. And I think at this point my dad had exited the vehicle, and so I was sitting there in the passenger seat, and my younger sister was lifting her leg up and had just stepped on like that platform to where you get onto
Yeah.
the rear facing seats, and our dog just sat down up front, but she sat down on the gas pedal.
No.
And so she hits the gas, and we're like careening towards that brick wall in the middle of the drive. And my younger sister has one foot on, and the other foot is skipping on the pavement as the golf cart is going.
That's amazing.
I think my dad jumped in last minute and stepped on the brakes because I know that it was not me that saved it that time. Not just that time, like I save it all the time. I know for sure that it was not me who stopped it from running into the brick wall. This is the second one's very short.
That was a good story.
Actually, I hesitate to even say this one because it's going to give my younger brothers some inspiration. My one already knows this. So where we live now, have probably 2 or 3 miles of gravel road before we get to our house. And for a while, I drove a 3/4 ton Suburban, old Suburban, still living, 450,000 miles, something like that. Very heavy, very low to the ground. And this gravel road that we live on is very windy and curvy around a mountain. And so, of course, if you hit those curves hard enough, you're going to drift on that gravel. And so I think probably junior year, I remember one time just taking it just a little bit too hard into the corner. There's like one corner that's perfect to drift, and
Oh
just
my
took
gosh.
it a little bit too hard, and like lost control and slid. The curves around the mountain, lost control and like slid into the side of the mountain. Somehow the Suburban was fine, but it was definitely like adrenaline fear moment.
Yeah, I'd be a terrified human being in that situation also.
It's like, do I have all my fingers and toes? What just happened? Yeah, good times. I'm sure Jasper
I have
is going
two
to bring it home
stories.
here.
They're both drifting stories. One in a car, one not in a car.
And
boy.
both you should not attempt.
Yeah, both don't do. But just know that even the adults in your life were at one time in high school and tried to impress people by looking cool. So, for those of you who don't know, I drive a 2002 4Runner. Not a
Roxy,
fast. Not
they
a
know.
yeah.
They know.
Yeah, they probably know. If you know me, you probably know about my
Seen
car.
him on the streets.
Yep. Everybody knows
You can
it's
hear
me.
Roxy coming.
But anyways, drove that in high school, and I played baseball in high school, and our field was probably about 10 minutes away. So we'd have to drive to our field, and we'd always kind of ride together. So I had a bunch of my friends in the car, and it's raining, and my tires were a little old. So if it's a little wet on the streets, you can drift.
Oh my
And so I'm
goodness.
like, oh man, this is a perfect opportunity. So I'm pulling out of my school, and this is going into seventh period. So like probably half of my school, so like 800 people, are outside and are walking to their cars.
Showtime,
Showtime!
baby.
It's time to go, and all my friends are hyping me up, saying, "You got this, let's go!" And so I pull out of the parking lot, and it's raining, and I punch it, and I drift. And I did not let go of my wheel fast enough for it to straighten out. So I did a 180 and ended up on the sidewalk in front of our school, and everyone is just staring at me. And I have to just quickly do another 180 to get going back straight and drive off as quick as I can.
I'd faint
I
from
can't believe you
embarrassment.
didn't like roll that thing. Those things are so like have such
Yeah, I
a
don't
skinny
know.
wheelbase. And it's lifted, isn't it?
Yes.
Was it lifted at this time?
Maybe.
Still, it's impressive.
Maybe. Second story, also involving drifting. We had 4-wheelers growing up, and we had a small one that was pretty quick, but it had bald tires towards the end of its life, and bald tires on grass drifts great. So I'd go as fast as I can, then slam on the brake and turn, and hope everything goes great. And it did not flip, but one time I did it, and I just got absolutely launched off the 4-wheeler and went flying.
Lessons on what not to
Well,
do.
I was about to say, are you done?
Yeah, I'll stop at those two. I have a lot more, but we'll stop
I'm
there.
sure. So before you decided to go out and hop on a 4-wheeler and do drifts and donuts and all that, let me just caution you with this cautionary tale. And I mean, it's definitely still not quite laughable, but obviously thankful that nothing worse came of it. My younger brother, middle brother, literally almost decapitated himself one time on a 4-wheeler because we were riding around at my grandparents' farm, and I don't think it was barbed wire, but sometimes instead of putting like a full gate to separate fencing areas, like the cattle will stop with just a single cord. Needless to say, those are not easy to see at a distance, and you don't realize them until last minute. So he's going downhill, and he had a helmet on, but he's going downhill, and that cord is right about neck height if you're sitting on a 4-wheeler, and he's going downhill. Saw it at the last second, and it caught his neck and threw him off the 4-wheeler, and he had like a massive burn on his neck.
That's literally giving me just like.
And he must have stepped on the brakes or something because the rope wasn't going to give. Like, the rope didn't break, and it threw him off. So, anyway, thankful nothing worse came of that, but also don't do it.
Yeah. Don't do it.
God's grace demonstrated in our lives
Yes.
as examples to not do the dumb things that we have done in the past.
Don't act like unthinking animals.
Yes, exactly. All right, we have verse 11 today. Lindsay, would you like to read verse 11
I would
for
love
us?
to. Sorry, I'm looking.
Would you, and this is kind of impromptu, would you want to maybe pick up at verse 3 and read 3 through 11 just so we get a little bit of context?
Good refresher.
Yeah.
All right, this is verses 3 through 11. Dear friends, I have been eagerly planning to write to you about all the salvation. Write to you about the salvation we all share. There we go. But now I find that I must write about something else, urging you to defend the faith that God has entrusted once for all time to his holy people. I say this because some ungodly people have wormed their way into your churches, saying that God's marvelous grace allows us to live immoral lives. The condemnation of such people was recorded long ago for they have denied our only Master and Lord, Jesus Christ. So I want to remind you, though you already know these things, that Jesus first rescued the nation of Israel from Egypt, but later he destroyed those who did not remain faithful. And I remind you of the angels who did not stay within the limits of authority God gave them, but left the place where they belong. God kept them securely chained in prisons of darkness, waiting for the day of judgment. And don't forget Sodom and Gomorrah and their neighboring towns, which were filled with immorality of every kind and every sexual perversion. Those cities were destroyed by fire and serve as a warning of the eternal fire of God's judgment. In the same way, these people who claim authority from their dreams, live immoral lives, defy authority, and scoff at supernatural beings. But even Michael, one of the mightiest angels, did not dare accuse the devil of blasphemy, but simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." This took place when Michael was arguing with the devil about Moses' body. But these people scoff at things they do not understand. Like unthinking animals, they do whatever their instincts tell them. And so they bring about their own destruction. What sorrow awaits them, for they follow in the footsteps of Cain, who killed his brother. Like Balaam, they deceive people for money, and like Korah, they perish in their rebellion.
All right, so in recap of Jude up to this point, we have discussed certain people who have came into the church, most likely unnoticed. You may, in certain cases, be able to notice these people, but there's also situations where you won't be able to notice them, and they are bringing in false teaching and things that are destructive to God's people that you may not be able to see easily on the surface. And we've been given examples from the Old Testament of how God has dealt with things like this in the past, and the way he has viewed sin in the past, and just the reality that these people are not led by the Holy Spirit or really by anything good, but are just led by their desires and what they cook up in their own mind is, I guess, the way for me to say that tonight. But we have these people, and now we're going to see maybe what are some of the motivations of their heart in examples from the Old Testament. And I have on my notes, in quotations, situations where people started faithful in appearance and then ended up not. So our first one for tonight is Cain and the story of Cain and Abel. Can anyone give us a quick recap of the story of Cain and Abel? Lindsay's translation actually pretty much told us what happened, but can someone kind of recap that for us? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Jude and I are having an intense stare down for which one was about to take that.
We were both so excited to jump in.
It's probably the easiest of the three, so
I can do it. Do it.
Okay.
I gotcha.
I want to ask for recaps.
So, well, the story of Cain. I mean, pretty honestly,
It's the most
names,
common out of these three.
names Cain and Abel are fairly understandable by most people even today. It's almost synonymous with things like Adam and Eve, or like Cain and Abel. They realize Cain killed his brother Abel. Even though people might not know like the history of that story, the idea that Cain killed his brother Abel is still very, very known. And that is exactly what it is. When the book of Jude is mentioning it, he's mentioning Cain, and the reason is because Cain was the first recorded murder in human history of killing his brother Abel. He took the life of another human being, which had not been recorded before. And we can assume had not been done before, but definitely not been recorded before. Cain taking the life of another person simply for a selfish reason. Yeah.
Why, and this is an open question, and I can answer it if I need to because I know I have the answer on note.
He's
but
got 10 pages of notes on this one verse.
Why was Cain angry with Abel?
Abel was receiving, in Cain's eyes, probably preferential treatment.
From who?
From God.
Why? You're
Abel's-
right, but why was he getting better treatment?
Abel's sacrifices to God were being received better than what Cain's sacrifices were.
So were they just being received better, or were they
Their
actually
heart was
better?
better. They were Abel
given
was
better.
genuinely giving sacrifices to God.
Yeah.
Cain was doing it out of what he considered obligation.
So I don't remember the exact words, but
Welcome
in
back to
general,
Genesis.
Abel's offering was his first fruits. So as soon as he got crop, I'm forgetting now which one had animals and which one had crops, but basically where Abel gave the best thing he had as a sacrifice to God, you have Cain, who really just offers kind of the leftovers or the scraps.
Yeah, Cain
And-
presented some crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portion of his firstborn lambs from his flock.
Yeah, so not that Abel brought an animal and Cain brought grain or crops,
Because that's where they worked. They worked in different
Yes.
harvests.
but Cain brought kind of just the leftovers, the not good stuff that he wouldn't really be able to use super well.
Yeah, well, and I'm looking at the verse right here too. It says Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. So, even if you don't want to say that he just, I don't know that you want to say that he just threw his scraps up there. But the idea is that this is just,
Yeah.
I'm going
He
to give
withheld.
you, yeah, well, I'm going to give you part of what we use, where the intention is like not there that I'm going to give you the best of what I have. I'm just going to give you some of what we all have. Like you're just one of us.
Yeah. So when we look at that, what did it say for Abel's?
Oh, gotta go all the way back to Genesis. You got
Come
it.
here.
Thank you.
What Abel brought?
Yes.
Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock.
Okay, so we have Abel who's bringing the best portions of the firstborn lamb.
Yes.
So the first lamb that's born, so the first one, and at that point, maybe there's not going to be any more after that. Whereas Cain is looking back and saying, okay, I have all this, now I can give you your allotment, versus Abel's really having to trust that God will continue to provide, and he's giving it in offering to God to say, thank you for your provision, and I'm giving you this because I have faith that you will continue to provide. All that to say, how in the world does this relate, and why is Jude talking about this here? So we can see a couple things of what happens to Cain. First, in his action. His action was he was offering what cost the least to him, whereas Abel offered what was dear to him and what would really cost him quite greatly. If he were to receive no more, he would be without a good bit if nothing else was received. So we see his action is he is just offering kind of what is the least he can do without really inconveniencing himself. And so whenever we're speaking of this in terms of how Jude is looking at this, these are people who are offering maybe spiritual sacrifices, so their time with the Lord just enough to kind of keep God at ease. And so that really kind of boils down to a wrong view of God.
Or what they think is keeping God at ease.
Yes.
Like that's their idea of God.
Yeah, kind of like even if you take that on a day-to-day basis, like I got up this morning, I read my Bible, so me and God are good for the day. That type of thing.
Yeah. Or I think we all can envision a person in our head of like, well, I'm good because I go to church on Sunday, or yeah, I'm going to heaven because I go to church on Sunday.
I am so sorry if that is your view of God, because that is not God. And like I want to be sure to say that. Like we're going to talk about how that is a lot of people's view. That used to be my view. I'm sure that used to be a lot of our views, is this idea of like it's just a creature that you have to appease or you have to please. Otherwise, punishment and hate will rain down on you. And that's not a God. That's honestly a manipulator is what it is. And that's not what God is. And the enemy, Satan, will try and make you think that that's how God is, and that is wrong. That is not at all how the Bible tells us he is. That's not how he instructs that he is. That's not his nature. And so I want to make sure to make that very clear. Is like that might be a people's assumption of how God is, but it is very wrong.
Yeah, that's I don't know that you would call that a stage of Christianity, and that you just need to mature more in your faith. That's a wrong.
That is a wrong interpretation of it completely.
So if that's you, listen up.
because, listen.
this the God in Scripture is one who cares about your whole life, and even the very idea of offering sacrifices is not to give God something he needs or that he wants. He has all that he can ever need or want. He does not need us at all. But because he loves us, he wants to know us, and he wants to spend time with us. And he doesn't want it just to be us kind of offering what we can or what will cost us the least, but he wants our whole lives because he's the one who can offer the best for us, not just be another thing that we have to satisfy throughout our days. So that's his action, show a wrong view of God, and also we'll look at his heart in his response to his brother's better sacrifice. So he saw Abel do something out of faithfulness. And what did that stir up in Cain? It stirred up bitterness and anger and violence. Is that the proper response for the Christian whenever you see others doing faithful things to God?
No, it is not.
No. What should the response be?
Joy.
Yeah, we should celebrate with them that they are able to do, that they are in relationship with God, and that they are doing what God has called them to. That should be our response. And this is, I don't want to not include women in this, but I think this is a little bit of a temptation for men with our kind of competitive nature, that you see someone do something good in their Christian walk, and you're like, man, I want to be better than that. And that's wrong. And that's something that we need to be aware of. It's something I can kind of fall into at times, but we have to go to God for repentance for that, because it should encourage us to see other people doing the will of God. Should be the most encouraging thing we see in a day.
And so these examples, verse 11 starts with what sorrows await them. And so after that is given, we now have descriptions of people who are met with sorrow. And so I think to link what you just said there, Jasper, imagine how joyful we would free ourselves up to be if we looked at every situation this way.
Yeah.
Like, how much sorrow flows out of the fact that if I'm trying to live in constant competition with other people, rather than being thankful and being joyful, that they are faithful to do what God has asked them to do.
My mom used to always tell me that comparison is the thief of joy. That when you compare, it is the one thing that takes your joy away, because you're looking and envying or becoming jealous, even if it's subconscious, even if you don't even realize you're doing it. It's so easy for that emotion to just start very small and then become very big. And so she used to tell me that when we compared ourselves to others, or when I would compare myself to what I thought I could be, which was perfect, it was wrong, because it stole the joy that God would be giving me. So thanks, Mom, if you're listening.
She does listen to these, so she will
Thanks,
hear
Mom.
this. All right. Good to move on to the second example. All right, so our second example is quite a lengthy story, honestly, but could be summed up fairly quickly. And it's the story of the prophet of Balaam, who was commissioned by Balak in Numbers, really from Numbers 22 all the way to Numbers 31, if you want to go read it. We're not going to look at all of it because it's quite a long story. But I'm just going to read a couple verses for us that kind of encapsulate what I think Jude is getting at here. And the first one is Numbers 22:22, and it says this. But God,
Sorry,
Ace is
Ace
getting
just
upset.
growled.
Get him, Ace.
Numbers 22:22, and the story starts a little bit before this, but it says, "But God's anger was kindled because he went, and the anger of the Lord took his stand in the way as his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his two servants were with him." So if you read the story, this verse is quite interesting, because just before this, here's kind of how the story goes. Balak goes to Balaam, or sends people to Balaam, to say, hey, there's these people, the Israelites. Balak is not an Israelite. He is a Moabite, I believe. He sends people to Balaam and says, hey, I need you to pronounce a curse on these people that are strong and powerful and are coming into our land and are going to take over us. So he goes to Balaam and says, "Can you do this?" And he says, "I can only do what the Lord tells me to." Balaam is also a Moabite, so that's an interesting response in itself. And then so he sends them away, and they go back to Balak, and Balak is like, "No, I need him." So they come back to Balak, and throughout this, Balaam has a dream, and the Lord comes to him in the dream and tells him, "No, you need to go with these men." So it's interesting that we have the Lord coming to Balaam in a dream and telling Balaam to go with these men. And then we have this verse that God is angry with him going. So also what has happened is Balak has offered a lot of money and expensive things to Balaam if he is to pronounce this curse and to bring a good prophecy for the Moabites. So what then can we say that this verse is the reality that Balaam's heart has changed. Maybe not that his heart has changed, but what he said has changed. He first said that he can only say what the Lord says. All right, and then he gets the opportunity to go with him, and he's like, he kind of at that moment, he's like, "Oh, I got the go ahead here, so now I'm good to take all these things." And then his mind shifts from, "Okay, I'm going to try to obey this God," to now I'm just going to do what I can to get this money.
Like I've been let through the gate. I've passed, so now I can do what I want to do. I think we talked about it last week. I've been given this freedom, so now I can do what I want to do. I think, to look back into verse 8 there for just a second, that's someone who claims authority from their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
That's someone who is allowing themselves to become the judge and the rule maker.
So we have someone who's claiming authority for themselves, who seemed obedient at first, but as soon as he saw what the Lord was calling him to, he decided he knew what was best, and that was to make these prophecies, which he actually didn't. The Lord stopped him from, and was actually continued to prophesy in favor of the Israelites. But he took upon himself to do what was right in his own mind, and he turned from faithfulness to profit. So what that could look like now is you do enough things, and you're like, "Well, okay, I must have done my part, and now I'm good to do what I want to do. I've done enough for God. Now it's my turn." And you see that maybe not a lot at our stage in life, but if you know any people that are older, that is a very common thing in our society, that you maybe have raised your family, and now it's like, okay, now it's time for me to have fun. It's my turn to do what I want. But that can take effect too. It's like, okay, on an even smaller basis, I go to church on Sunday, so I'm good there. So now I can do what I want throughout the week.
That is a thing amongst older people. It is also a very real thing amongst younger people, like our age and even younger, like people in elementary, middle, and high school. That's a very, very real temptation, is to show up and feel emotions for an hour at a chapel service or at a Sunday morning service, and then to live like you have no idea who Jesus is the rest of your time.
Yeah, the last thing, one other verse towards kind of the end of this story, and we see kind of the outcome of it, is Numbers 31, verses 15 and 16. They had been, or actually, we'll just do 16. "Behold, these," actually, no, I will read 15. "They were commanded to take out all of the city, a certain city that I believe Balaam was in. And Moses said to them," this is verse 15, "Moses said to them, 'Have you let all the women live? Behold, these, on Balaam's advice, caused the people of Israel to act treacherously against the Lord in the indictment of Peor. And so the plague came among the congregation of the Lord.'" So they look to someone like Balaam, who has not exhibited, maybe not that they've seen, but has not exhibited faithfulness in all that he does. But he still goes and pronounces prophecies in favor of the Lord. And the Lord used him in that way. But because he did, the people of God looked to Balaam as a leader. And when they did that, his true colors showed, and they were led into great sin. and it caused a lot of death. So we look at the end of this and being led into Balaam's error for the sake of gain. Number one, at the beginning, for the sake of gain. And then number two, they took over the city and were supposed to destroy it, but yet they saw, in a very real sense, they saw women they wanted, and they took that because the person who was leading them, who was doing things for the sake of gain, had really impressed upon them that they should also do things for the sake of gain.
As we walk through these examples, and we got one more to talk about, I think it might be useful to think about these things in the context of, we talked about this past Sunday actually, what defines a relationship? If Christianity is based off of a relationship that I have with God the Father through Jesus Christ, His Son, in what way is doing something to appease someone so that they can let me do what I want? That's not a healthy relationship. Talking about the example of Balaam there, that's not a healthy relationship. Nor is giving someone just whatever I want to give them. That's not a picture of a healthy relationship.
No.
If I have a healthy relationship with someone, even if you think about it in the context of friendship, I want to let down some of my guards and be able to relate to them and care for them and act in a certain way because of that, and not have such a superficial back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that gets us into our third and final example very well, which is the example of Korah's rebellion. That is found in Numbers 16. I'm not going to read all of it, but I am going to read a few verses that kind of set the scene for us. Now I'm going to start in verse 1 and read to verse 3. It says this: Now Korah, the son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, and Dathan, and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and the son of Pelath, sons of Reuben, took men. They rose up before Moses with a number of people of Israel, 250 chiefs of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. They assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, You have gone too far, for all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? So, two quick Bible trivia questions. Who were the priests of God's people in the Old Testament? What tribe?
The Levites.
Yeah, the Levites. Okay, so we read there at the beginning that Korah was a Levite. Who was in charge? The two people put in charge of God's people in the first, in like Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers.
Moses and Aaron.
Yes, Moses and Aaron. All right, they were put in charge by God to do this. But we have Korah coming up saying, why in the world are you exalting yourself over these people? Which, number one, is a lie. They did not exalt themselves over these people. But they're saying, we all deserve equal authority, no matter what God has given you. I don't care what God has given you. I want authority. And so, in a sense, what they're saying is that their role was not enough. Because they had a special role. They were the priests of God's people. They had a special role, but they were not satisfied with the role that God had given them, and they wanted more. Specifically, they wanted more power. A quick note on this that I think is very prevalent in our culture is the idea of Christian leadership. Not everyone is meant to be a leader, but Christians should lead, but not everyone has the same calling of leadership. And Jude, what you were saying about our relationship, whenever we look to something like this, and the end of that story is all of them are swallowed up literally into the earth. And it's a pretty gruesome ending. But they wanted power, and they wanted to be in leadership. And for us who are in leadership, we desire leadership so much that we forget that what God is actually calling us to in a relationship. Why is it not good enough to be a faithful servant, a faithful son or daughter? Someone who is willing to do things that other people do not want to do. We want to do the things that everyone wants to do. But that's not always what God is calling us to. Sometimes we don't get the position of authority, and that can be a great blessing. And it's okay to not always be in the spotlight, because God uses people that aren't in the spotlight all the time to bring about good things for his people.
Yeah, that's super important to know. I just want to hammer that in really, really efficiently. Is like, so often we think that if I fall into this temptation too. So this is like like a royal we, that if you're a Christian, then you have to like be a leader and like be like in charge and like but my goodness, like the disciples were followers. That was their role, was to follow Jesus, not to lead, to follow Jesus. There is such a place for following and seeking and listening and learning, and I want to make sure that that is just as valued as leading, just like Jasper said.
The world is full of examples of people who are in positions of authority who have been utterly crushed by the demands that are put on them and the stresses that they have. We actually, before we started recording today, in a way discussed around some of these things. Of course, sorrow is to follow for someone who is filtering every decision through what they think is best. Imagine all the pressure that comes with thinking the buck stops with you all the time, versus the peace that comes from understanding that I'm not the one that's in charge, and I'm not the one ultimately that the buck. I don't have to be responsible for the fate of the entire world, right? That is the person that I serve, and my job is to be faithful, and that is so freeing of a thought.
Yeah, our goal as God's people and as followers of Jesus is not to try to find the way to do the least we can do to make God happy. It is not to seek gain or profit from what we're doing. And the goal is not to just be in authority or in leadership, but it is to serve the God who has saved us, to serve our Redeemer, and to serve our Father who loves us. And when we do that, that is the richest that we can ever be. When we try to seek those things ourselves, we will be, as Jude said, we will find immense sorrow. But we will find great joy and great pleasure in doing what God gives us to do, no matter if it's hard, because even if it's hard, that does not mean it's bad. God gives hard things to his people all the time, and they are of great benefit and great blessing to all.
For sure. Well, any last and final thoughts before we close? Thank you guys for listening to this one. I know it was a little bit long, but I know I'm really grateful to have been a part of it, and I learned a lot just sitting here and walking through this passage with you guys. So, like always, you can email us at northbedfordbaptist.org, and we're really excited to continue working through Jude. All right, have a wonderful evening.
Bye.